Did you grow on your own? Like, is that where you learn how to grow and then
Yeah,
you're able
for
to
sure.
apply that, like, without like having to get too into detail? But like a lot of folks, they have their own personal experiences and very small scales, and then they get a chance to apply.
Yeah, in Denver, we were always really lucky to have genetics. I was linked in with a good group of a few different people that we were always the first people in Denver with some of these certain strains that really changed the game and the market. Forum cookies, Chem 91, Sour Diesel, LA Kush, all the stuff that, Gorilla Glue. We were always
On that.
always lucky to have those first, and so along with people that have really good genetics, they also know how to grow really well. So there's just a really good pool of knowledge that we kind of had there, and I was just lucky to know a lot of good people through the music scene really in Denver. So yeah, that knowledge just kind of was passed through, and once we started to scale up, we realized that we're still kind of growing the same flower, just with better equipment, more of it.
What are you most passionate about in the cultivation process? Like, are you more passionate about the genetic side? Are you more passionate about the actual like cultivation, curing? What gets you like the most? Like, 'cause there's so much to it. Like, you see some people, they just nerd out in their curing process because they think they have the best curing process to preserve their terpenes, and like that's what they nerd out at.
Yeah.
There's other ones that they're like, it's the soil that we use, or it's this blend of nutrients. It's just like everyone's got their own little kind of thing.
Yeah, I would say I've always kind of focused on the genetics. I've always kind of had in my head what I love. It's a lot of gas, a lot of sour chem gas, so that whole kind of, that's what I've always focused on. And so I would say, yeah, the genetics and the smells, the flavors is really what the smell and the flavors of what I always went for. The high, the effects were always part of it, but the smell and the flavor was always my number one.
My first dispensary experience was at a place called Greenworks in Colorado, and the dude was he was super cool, and he basically said, "Look, we got a lot of hybrids in here. The best way for you to the nose knows basically, and let's just start popping jars and smelling." And I was like, "This is." There was coffee beans that cleansed my palate. Like the whole thing was great, and I really started seeking out those citrusy, and for me, it's like limonene is like my favorite terpene. I'm really finding this flavor profiles that are really strong and citrusy. I tend to really seek towards them. My behavior has changed a lot in the fact that I used to really be a flower purist back in the day, and when the black market was starting to bring concentrates out, I wasn't really into it. I wasn't convinced that the dude who couldn't pass high school chemistry now all of a sudden got all the butane out of his extracts.
Yep.
And it smelled like butane. I was just a little skeptical,
Tasted
right?
a little bit like butane.
Tasted a little butane. Is this supposed to spark when I smoke it?
Yeah, the nail is sizzling.
Yeah. So I was really kind of late in terms of some of the early adopters of concentrates, but now, and I've never smoked cigarettes. I've never really liked that. I don't know how to explain it, but once I got into concentrates and really started getting those really high terpene profiles and really getting a chance to, like Grapefruit Sour Dream, caught from you guys, is one of my favorites. That's like, that was, if I'm trying to describe like my top flavor profile, like that's got that citrusy in it. It's uplifting. It doesn't make
18% usually.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I'm doing a concentrate, right?
Oh, okay.
So like,
yeah.
like the butters and like the sugars that you guys. So I just recently started smoking flower again a few months ago. But I went almost a year without smoking like any flower. Just busy dude. I don't have time to medicate like I used to. So being able to take a dab twice a day in the morning and night when I'm just hectic is convenient. I don't really have the time to like sesh like I used to.
Exactly. Smell it up too,
Yeah, exactly. But when I do, and I have these last couple of weeks, like it's been cool to go back to some of the things that you guys throw out there. Was it sugar biscuits yesterday? I picked up. We just actually put out new packaging to really feature that, make it look nicer, because you guys did such a great job in getting that. It looks so sharp. We wanted to make sure we were doing a better job of displaying it. But
very cool, very cool.
What are some of your favorite strains that you're putting out by CULTA? Is there anything new coming down the line that you can talk about?
I mean, that's one thing with CULTA. We're always constantly kind of trying to find some new genetics. We're actually, for the 2021 outdoor season, we're going to be doing quite a few new ones as well, both indoor and out. So, of the new stuff, from CULTA, we don't have too many that's in flower that's upcoming, but by the end of the summer you'll start to see some stuff. But my favorites, I mean, Sugar Biscuit 9, that thing is as nice as you can really get in my eyes. Gelato 25 Do-si Do. I'm not a huge Poochie Love fan. It's that cheesy pineapple.
Yeah, that's not really my profile either, but damned if I don't get text messages from my friends like on the other side of the bridge, like, hey, where do I find Poochie Love at? Like, it's got a following like something else.
I would say, I mean, at this point I've grown hundreds of strains, and I would say that's maybe up there with the most unique terp profile I've ever smelled. It's just
funky.
Yeah, there's a lot of layers to it, and I've heard some pretty good descriptions that I can't quite say, on here as far
you
as.
Can say dog shit.
Yeah, well, it gets a little funkier than this, but it's still.
Yeah, let's just stop there.
Yeah, it's still just like put it this way: the trimmers absolutely hate it because when it's in there, it's just a cloud of Poochie that is undeniable, and so. It's one of those that's so strong that it almost turns your stomach when you're in the room.
Is your are you guys gonna do around the same size outdoor grow this year as last year? Or is it expanding?
So yeah, we're gonna do the same size.
Because it was huge, and I got a chance to go. I got to tour. Your last time I went for a tour was like September. Like it was harvest season, and you could tell that the harvest was bountiful.
Yeah.
And that there was a lot of preparations being made to try to get everything out of the.
Yeah, this is our third season. This will be our third season, and so for indoor, I think we're now on our 60th harvest. For outside, we've had 2. And so there's a lot of learning involved in a long period of time instead of it inside where you can keep on learning stuff over and over and over.
It was pretty cool to watch. The greenhouse like automatically like open, like the sun, it was like noon and all of a sudden the greenhouse was like, oh, the sun's too high, and it just like the top adjusted. And
I mean, we have it hooked up to a weather station that can take barometric pressure, wind speeds, all the temperatures and soil temperatures. There's a lot of different parameters that if it gets above or beyond a certain point that if the wind is coming from the northwest at 10 miles an hour, we shut the north and the west wall, and it allows the rest of it to open and breathe. So it's really cool because it's an outdoor field, but you're able to kind of control that.
A little bit of control over the elements, right?
Sure. So I mean, we're in the middle of a swamp, obviously, in Cambridge, and so to have that control is a huge benefit.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important. We just mentioned Cambridge real quick. I love the fact that you guys share a parking lot with a police station. I think that's great. I think it's from a security standpoint, it's on point.
Yep.
When I first toured that facility like 3 years ago, it doesn't look very much like it does today at all.
Yeah, it's the building that we were in in 2018 compared to today is the area that we're in. It's just it's a
talking millions of dollars of improvements, and then you start thinking about the employee count. I mean, I could have swore it was around 25 employees when we toured there in like 18, and now it's over 100, right? When you figure in like your seasonal folks that'll be coming in for the summer's harvest.
Yeah, I mean, all of our seasonals that stuck through the season, they're now full time. They've all been put into different departments, and will continue growing with CULTA. That's a really cool thing. I mean, I don't know the exact number, but I want to say we're about 120 employees just in Cambridge. That's not including, across the bridge. And
I just love that because this is what was promised to the Eastern Shore, like ourselves too, like in a much smaller capacity. We now have over 30 employees in our dispensary.
Yeah, I mean,
and these are jobs that we promised that we were going to bring. And I was talking to the mayor of Salisbury yesterday. Julia Glanz, and was discussing CULTA's success in juxtaposition to Chrisfield, where I know Mackie personally went down there and said, I have an economic boon for your town. I have a great opportunity. You have all these processing plants that were no longer employing people and are shut down. I will bring lifeblood back to Chrisfield. Nah, I don't know if we're ready for something like that. And then here's Cambridge. It's like, come. I know for a fact So Susan, who's the economic development director for Dorchester County, has been really supportive of CULTA,
Yeah.
and us. And we have a CBD brand that was in the Innovation Center for a while, right across from the airport. It's just cool that Dorchester County has been open-minded and they've seen the development with Barrio and you guys, and they've done a better job of being a good steward. And I just think it just shows that cannabis can really be what people would expect it to be for an economic development standpoint, as long as they have a good partner within the city. I know that you guys have gone through a ton of expansion over the last 3 years, and the city has not, in my opinion, from what I've seen from the outside, done very much to slow that down or impede your process. But
Yeah, I mean, like you said, we've stuck to our word and done everything we said we were going to do, and that's created a lot of opportunity in Cambridge and Dorchester. So there's really nothing that we've brought to them that they haven't been fully supportive of, because they see it firsthand.
and not everyone's like that. I mean, we know like in places like Anne Arundel County and others, they've done everything they can to impede the progress.
Talbot County, there's not, Chrisfield was just one of maybe 10 places.
Yeah, you're right.
That we approached about putting CULTA there, and we fully almost expected Cambridge to do the same, but they understood that there hasn't been a lot of new opportunity, so they chose it on that regard, and so
They're winning.
They are extremely happy. There's been a lot of other development in Cambridge since then, that's probably has a little bit to do with
the marketplace and all that stuff. I mean, there's some other growth opportunities going on, but to your point, I mean, I know for a fact that when they're out beating the drum on why Dorchester County is great, they're sharing the CULTA story.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sitting in on Chamber of Commerce meetings and stuff. We're really doing what we can to.
Good old Bill Christopher.
Yep, Bill's my man. So we're just trying to keep our presence there and show everybody that we're in it to win it.
I think that's great that you sit in those meetings. I mean, we do it locally here as well, and there's not always a ton of representation from our industry in these professional settings, and it's more important that we do that, and I think that's awesome.
Yeah, it's breaking down the stereotype. That's just another version of that, and showing that we're very responsible. We're taking it very seriously and wanting to do the right thing.
Yeah, there's different ways that you can break down a stigma, and there's different approaches that people have, and like I've always led with be a good example and a kind of like a good ambassador of the industry, and you're not going to find me like walking down the street with a big sign and yelling and screaming at people. And I just think that the more that you can assimilate and just act as normal as you would a regular business and validate your business as just like every other business, the more professionals slowly but surely will be able to take you in. I'm actually the keynote speaker for our chamber luncheon in May. I'm giving a presentation in our Greater Salisbury Committee in April, and I really value these opportunities to be able to get in front of decision makers and folks that matter in the community, because it gives me a platform to get like some common ground with them and share with them some of the success that cannabis is having. And every time we give a presentation, I know that like it may be just one or two folks in a room, but we're starting to like pick them off, right?
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
So what we talked about the cookies a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I am someone that kind of like a brand junkie. Like I love analyzing brands. I know a lot. Like I pay a lot of attention to logos. I pay a lot of attention to brands' cultures, which is why I'm so impressed by CULTA's culture. And the cookies brand to me is an anomaly. It's an enigma. It really is done. It's one of the first brands that I've seen get such national attention and garnish such a following. They do a lot of things right.
Yeah, they kind of just wrote the book on cannabis marketing for sure, but they're just tapping into just that. They're so simple at a point. It's kind of weird. Like we went out a couple years ago to a festival that they brought us out for when we were first kind of getting the relationship going, and so I got to kind of see, their presence in California, and it was just, it was really kind of cool to break it down. They have just a couple basic logos. They've chosen a blue that is very, it's unique. It's kind of their own blue. It's not the North Carolina blue. It's their own little blue. They've always timed everything right and done everything kind of correctly. And so it's just, yeah, it's really cool to kind of see them go from a YouTube video, you know, in 2012 or 13 or whenever that was, to this worldwide brand and just doing it kind of smartly.
Even like I don't get to the mall very often, but I was at the mall, I guess like 2 weeks ago, and I walked by one of like the, I'm so freaking old. I walked by one of the young kids' clothing stores, and they had Cookies branded clothing in the shop in the mall.
Yeah.
It was like that Yumi's place or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, like that's like never in my life would I expect to see like Rhythm T-shirts like in like a Yumi store, but here's Cookies, you know.
Yep.
Getting it done.
They've gotten into the market in a lot of different
stores. I can't
stores.
imagine if I was like 15 years old and I could rock a Cookies. I probably thought I was so cool wearing my Cookies T-shirt at 15.
My nephew's definitely, he's 18 and rocking one, just as proud, you know. I mean, I had my Cookies backpack when they were first, you know, selling those back in the day. My carbon lined, that doesn't actually smell proof. It sounded cool, but that, you know, if you're got any herb in there, it's not hiding that.
Any loud.
Yeah, but it was still cool. You know, you're like, I got my Cookies bag.
So, I guess I don't know a ton about the brand history really pre-Maryland. It's kind of when I got into it. Was Cookies a brand that was relevant when you were in Denver before you moved here?
I mean, so yes and no. Like, their genetics they kind of, the forum cut of the Girl Scout cookies came to Denver in probably 2012. And it wasn't their Thin Mint phenotype, but it was, you know, one of the original bag seeds that came out. And so that's how, once that hit Denver, everybody flipped out. Like, nobody had ever seen or smelled or tasted anything like it. And for a long time, the only real strain that they were known for is the Thin Mints, you know. And so they did kind of have a presence with some clothing, but, you know, other than if you had their strain, people didn't talk about them a lot. You know, it wasn't really a big thing in Colorado because there's a lot of other things happening. But I think now, just with what they've done nationally, you know, now they're in Denver, they have a footprint there too. So I'm pretty sure it's a huge thing in Denver now. Years ago, it really wasn't, though, no. That was more California.
It seems like maybe sometime within the last, like, 2 or 3 years is when there's something kind of just popped and they really started getting that momentum.
Yeah. You know, I think that just comes...
CULTA maybe, right?
Yeah. I mean, it also just like, you know, they didn't really focus on genetics for a long time. They were just focusing on their brand. And now that they've got their brand built, now they can...
They can
go back to the genetics and do what they're doing there. And so I think it was kind of a natural thing they built.
Do you have a favorite cookie strain?
I mean, the Gary Payton is just... It's tried and true. It's just as good as it gets, really, in my eyes. The soap is another one that...
The soap is super popular.
Yep. We have some new ones coming down the line that I'm really excited about, though, from Grandiflora, the E85 and the Red Velvet.
My buddy tagged me, and we had the... I'm forgetting now. Gary Payton? No. Georgia Pie. Sorry.
Yeah, the pie, yeah.
I think last week, that dropped here.
Yep.
And that was on Friday, and that was really popular.
Yeah, I would say the pie, the Gary, and the soap are my three favorite. But you know, honestly, there's a lot. The Project 4510 is the other one that I've been loving because it's just really, really gassy. So anytime there's heavy gas, I'll be a fan.
Do you have to do and I don't even know if you can share this, but is there different protocols with the cookies than your flour, or is everything kind of grown the same? I know that they're like designated. I know I've seen like the little blue markings. Oh, this is the cookies.
Yeah, I mean,
rack, and this is the regular rack.
In production scale, you know, we kind of have to grow them together. So basically, we just have a certain amount that we put in each room, or a certain amount of strains, but they all have to be within our parameters of feedings and you know, temperatures, humidities, all that stuff. If they're not falling in line with our production, then we just can't run them.
Yeah, because it seems like, correct me if I'm wrong, but is Cookies the only branded flour in Maryland? Like, for instance, you see like Wana gummies, and you see like national brands in the process side of things a lot more, like Dixie and all that. You know, Dixie's providing them with SOPs, and Dixie's saying you have to make this formulation just like this. But with flour, like, they can't really say like, you have to do everything exactly like this because it's a living organism and you're going to have to grow based upon what's
exactly.
what's
Yeah,
handed to
with
you.
edibles, yeah, it's an extremely dialed in SOP that is replicable all throughout. But with growing, yeah, every grower, every room, every system, there's so many variables.
The amount of variables. Let's talk about that real quick because I think sometimes, especially folks that have never seen the scale of like a grow. So like a couple of the two major systems that I pay attention to when I tour a facility now, which is hilarious because people are like what's the most exciting thing about going to see a grow? Like sometimes I'm really impressed by their RO system
Yep.
and the HVAC.
Yeah, I mean those
right?
are their two most important things, really.
Because you understand how important the RO system and basically that's how these plants are eating is through the nutrients is being flushed through their hydroponics. That's right? Or
Yeah,
not,
yeah. I mean, the way that we grow in cocoa is technically considered hydroponics. Yeah.
And then understanding how important consistent temperature and humidity are across. Like you go into 100,000 or 10,000 square foot room or however big it is, and then you can see if it's not consistent in the lighting and the humidity and the HVAC, this plant looks different than that plant. Like there's no consistency.
Yep.
You see like the good and bad, and it's gotten a lot. It's also my ADD kicks in sometimes, but it's also wild to see the plants now compared to when we first started and people were still pheno hunting,
Yeah.
and they didn't have the strongest plants out there.
Yeah, oh yeah. That was an issue with us for
Everyone
the
had
first
to.
year,
I mean,
yeah.
unless you cheated, you
Yep.
didn't really have you didn't have the greatest opportunity to have that strong. So like, I remember seeing a lot more sick plants and a lot more challenges with growers when we first started before they had the strongest phenotypes, and that was an interesting thing for me to learn about.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's everybody at this point in Maryland has stepped up their game big time, compared to a few years ago. That's just kind of the natural cool thing about being able to replicate it, do it over and over again. So, I've seen really every company really come up in the last few years, quality-wise.
Yeah, I think that's consistent. Even to your point, like some of the growers that were maybe like mass scale that weren't really putting out high quality, like we've toured their facilities now, and like there's lessons learned, and like to the expectations from the patient base were so high when we opened. One of my favorite things was we were one of the first 5 dispensaries opened in the state, so we were there in the very beginning. Patients like, have to have flower, right? So what do the growers do? They rush the curing process and get the flower out.
Yep.
This isn't cured properly. They rushed it. We're like, what do you want, man? Like, you can't have it like yesterday and then not rush the curing process.
Yeah.
And it just became this kind of like no-win situation where the demand for flower was so high that it was outweighing, in some ways, the demand for the highest quality product. And it was like this like,
yeah,
crossroad.
if you could cut that corner of a week of cure or a week of drying or whichever, throw it through the trim machine faster, whatever it is, to get it there quicker.
Yeah.
That is the one thing about, the Maryland market is that it can kind of seem like that sometimes where there's timing decisions made that aren't probably the best. But
do you guys have do you guys feel comfortable with the production you're putting out right now? Is there aspirations to continue to ramp up, or it's got to be, right? Because the demand is still high.
Yeah, we're installing. I mean, within 1 month, we're going to have probably 40% more flower capacity than we do today. So we have another huge expansion that's coming online, in the beginning of May. So just a little over a month. That's actually going to be the veg prep area for the outdoor plants, but then the very second that all of those have been moved out and or in the fields, then we have this new state-of-the-art room that we turn around and becomes flower. So we have a 10-year plan right now that we're 3 years into, and the plans and the ideas that are there are pretty massive, and it's really for the next 7-8 years, whatever it looks like, we're not stopping really at all. So it's constantly evolving.
That's good to hear. And the market's still desperate for high quality flower. Always, like, it's still a little bit of it's not as bad of a challenge as it's been. We seem to be getting in. Is Is this a valid thing, or is this just something in my head? It seems like even though there's indoor grows and harvests, back when there wasn't a legal program, there seemed to be shortages around like 420 and around like March and April. And like we have a legal program, and I feel like I'm always sitting fat in December on flower. And we start getting into like the April, May, June, it always gets like tight. Like, is that?
Yeah, I mean that kind of happened in Colorado too. Like even with it's just like summer.
Just demand raises, or just like it's not really.
I don't know. Like in summertime, you have a lot more difficult to keep your environment. So in Colorado, if it was small scale, like in your basement, you just stopped growing. For the summertime, so that's what caused that. Even in the legal market, some people's grows just aren't dialed in for
super hot
or super cold, whichever. So then you can run into those. So it is kind of real, but it's. I would say it's probably just environmental that would cause that.
Do you prefer to grow indoor or outdoor?
I've always been indoor, but I mean I love when you get good outdoor. It's undeniable how awesome it is. The sun, no matter how good LED technology gets, we're never going to compete.
Sun, right?
Yeah, so that's the cool thing. Once you get high quality outdoor flower, it doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah, it's cool. Like I mentioned, when I was there, the plants were 6 foot over my head. I mean, I was like I got some great pictures from being out there, and it is beautiful. And like they just they seem less inhibited when they're outside, right? Like it just seems like more. It's almost like a bunch of Christmas trees out there.
Yeah, they get to fully do what they want to do in their genetics. Like the strains that are inside that want to be a monster. You can just tell that they want to grow bigger than they're able to inside. With the lighting intensities and all that. Once you throw them in the fields, you have a 12-foot Poochie love that just. That Poochie obviously wants to keep on going, but the sun gives it that ability to do that.
That's really neat. Are you involved in the processing at all? In the fact that I know some of the other verticals that I deal with, the reason, and I think CULTA makes really great processed products, right? So I guess what I'm asking, and I'm assuming that they're fresh frozen, so you guys are have to be working hand in hand with the processing guys to make sure that you're getting them really good starting material that they're able to make these bomb concentrates with, right?
Yeah, exactly. We start working with Michelle Sprawls, who's our lab director, right at clone, right as we're starting to take our clones, and we pretty much sit there and say, if we're going to take this amount of clones of these many strains, we need to give you this amount to make this exact SKU, and so it really does start from clone all the way through. That we are kind of working hand in hand with the lab to make sure that they're getting their goals and getting the products that they want to. Because it's just always a constant rotating machine there.
Are there any strains that you loved personally, but they just aren't built for like scalable, like
oh yeah,
like there's a lot that'll have like a 24-week period, and you're just like that just doesn't really work in our schedule.
We don't have too many that flower too long. I mean, we've definitely messed with some sativas. Poochie in itself, that thing probably wants to go 2 more weeks. In flower, it easily could, and I don't even want to know like what it would do at that point. But the ones that we run into with like production problems is if they veg too slowly. We have a pretty set system on how long we want our plants to be vegging, and if there's just a lot of strains that are runts, they just do not want to grow vigorously or quickly or anything, no matter how much attention you give them. And so those are the ones that we've had to cull out. Do-si-do kind of toes the line on being able to hang on in our facility as far as timing goes, but that's one that will obviously go the extra step to get. But we've learned over time that there's not a whole lot we want to take that extra step for. It's we have so many strains in our seed bank that I know would be quality wise absolutely amazing, but I just also know the genetics in them aren't vigorous, quick growers, so we just can't really do it. The OGKB that Fletcher just released, we have his original the OGKB seeds from years and years ago. It's a phenomenal strain, and everybody's really excited about it, but it just does not grow vigorous for production at all. And it's just so that's an example of one that I would love to run, just can't.
Yeah. And do you ever grow with the intention to send right to processing, not necessarily fresh frozen, but like, is there any strains that just get real bushy or bulkier? I guess it's probably part of the outdoor will do that, right? Like you just take the outdoor that's not.
Yeah. We have a few that the bud to leaf ratio is just crazy, so the trimmers hate it. It's more of a biomass strain at that point. So those are the ones what we're going to be doing outside. We don't have too many that are like that inside. Our Lemon G Chem de la Chem is one that just is this big bush, massy bush, but that's one we put up with. But for the most part, the really crazy leaf ones we're not a fan of inside. Just they tend to just not do as well for us.
Anything else you want to tell anyone before we sign off today? Any more CULTA plugs or anything in the future or any? Can people follow you on Instagram or?
Yeah. I got my handle. Will Travel for Art is my Instagram name on there. Of just I used to take pictures of murals when I traveled around, and as I kept on growing, stopped traveling and started posting up pictures of what I'm growing. So that's my Instagram handle. We're going to be bringing a lot of new genetics, a lot of new technology, new lighting companies, new HVAC companies that we're using. We're going to be using FOHSE, FOHSE is the name of the company, and they're a new player in the LED market and seem to be, they have a lot of talk about them. So we're really excited to be working with them. Kind of see what they can bring to us as well. New HVAC systems that can, as you're kind of saying earlier, that can really hopefully keep that 1 to 2 degree the entire time. Once we can get to that level, it's going to be pretty incredible. So, but yeah, constantly growing. Got some, edible potential down the line. There's, those regulations have kind of opened up. So, yeah, I mean,
still waiting.
Yeah, still waiting. But
still waiting on the final regulations. I know we're
preparing.
Getting close. Yeah, everyone's preparing. It's that's a concern for us is what the testing regulations are going to look like for edibles and if they're going to make this more complicated than it needs to be. And
I'm sure they will. Maryland likes to always, put a couple
learn from their mistakes.
Yeah. So, but yeah, we're just keeping our nose to the ground and working hard. So
I really appreciate you taking some time and coming on today. I really appreciate what CULTA does, and this has been really cool getting to know you a little bit, and look forward to having you guys back on as CULTA continues to grow and we continue to collaborate. So thanks so much, Jay.
No problem.